So welcome everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Marjorie Spitz. I'm the president of Balance Integration Small Business Division. So I work with small businesses and help guide them to grow and get the outcomes they want to achieve, as well as do executive coaching and run some retreats and all that good stuff. And Tevis is the CEO of Balance Integration there in the red. On this beautiful day. And, I was telling Scott this morning, I'll introduce in a moment, small businesses, they are the backbone of our economy. And it's so nice to see a lot of businesses reopening. However, I was reading a Wall Street Journal article a couple of days ago, and it said that 200,000 more than usual small businesses have closed during this, right? So that's challenging. That just states the challenges right there. At the same time, they're saying about 500,000 small businesses have opened during this, right? For people who might have lost their jobs or whatever, or decided they take this opportunity to follow their passion. So it's a really interesting time for small business. I give you guys a lot of credit for doing the work that you do and pursuing it. And so, my passion for it comes from my blood. I have grandparents who started a bakery and others who were doing research companies and bootlegging and all kinds of things that were going on, scrappiness to get their businesses going and to grow them. And growth is so important. It's Scott and I were talking the other day, and it's like if growth is stalling, then there's the business, right? And a lot of people go into business because they have a passion for something, right? They have a passion for a product or a service, but it might not be their expertise to actually create the business to make it successful. So that's why we do these things, to show you guys the support and give you the guidance that you need. Hopefully you can take a tidbit from today. We'll talk about sales, right? Since growth is so important. And I am passionate about this too, because I started my career in direct marketing, and a lot of it was about lead gen, but it was also very much about the qualified lead and converting the sale, right? Because if we don't have qualified leads, then we can't convert the sale. And so we'll talk a bit about that as well. And so we'll talk about how to create buzz, break through the clutter, smarketing. I don't know if you all heard that term, but I love that name. Leveraging connections and making the most of your first shot, so that we can actually convert that sale, and the power of patience and the importance of resiliency, especially during this time. So I want to make this interactive. And so definitely you can put stuff in the chat. You can ask questions, raise your hands, whatever you like. This is time for you. We don't want to be just talking heads here. So that's what that's the format we like to set, so that's different time for you. And just to set some ground rules, everyone please participate. Really, the more you participate, the more you get. Feel free to put your contact information in the chat if you want to keep in touch with people. And we want to make this a safe zone, so it's a no pitch zone. So we're not going to go around right now and say what everybody does and snap, but you feel free to put that into the chat and share. And so that's my spiel to get us started before I introduce Scott Sinclair. So full disclosure, Scott and I grew up together in Comac. We go way, way back. Actually, Peter Rothman's on the phone too. He's a Comacian as well. And we also went to college together. We were in the business fraternity Delta Sigma Pi, among other social and activities that we did. And so we go way, way back, and we kept in touch over the time. I've always been inspired. I've always been inspired by the work that he's done, his entrepreneurial spirit, his creativity, especially when it comes to business. And he's going to share a lot of that with us today. And, I said hey, Benji, I said in the intro on my emails to y'all, before concierge was a thing, like now you can pretty much get anything delivered to you, right? Groceries, whatever it is, in an instant, within 15 minutes, right? There's literally, I worked on a project last week that was about 15-minute delivery guaranteed. And before that was a thing where you can also have anything delivered or picked up, Scott really saw a niche in the market and launched a new company that was an on-demand storage service, Box Butler. For those of you who may have heard it, it was purchased. He grew from zero to a seven-figure business that was then purchased. So he knows a lot about breaking through the clutter and how to set yourself up for success. Since then he's been in a number of positions. Most notably, he runs all of U.S. sales for We Localize, which they do 50 million in sales. And the interesting thing that I thought about that too is that they wipe the slate clean every year. So it's not like, oh, we've got all this sales and it's going to keep on rolling in. Like, no, we got to wipe the slate clean every year. So we'll talk a lot about that. And so welcome, Scott.
Thank you, Margie. It's nice to be here, and I appreciate joining your webinar. So thank you for having me. It's an honor and a privilege.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And you guys wrote some interesting things in about your sales challenges. So we'll talk about those. But right now, I wonder if you could, one of the things that Scott and I talked a lot about was, what do you want the outcome to be, right? Do you want the outcome to be you're selling your company? Do you want it to be growth by a certain amount? Do you want it to be about, attracting VCs? What do you want your outcome to be? So write in the chat, and we're curious for everybody that's participating here. What are you looking for? Why sales? Why grow your business? What's your outcome? What's your desired outcome, people? And if you don't want to write in the chat, you can speak up. Reduce the risk of key person dependence. Quit my day job. Love it. Consistent cash flow.
More commission.
More commission. money. Yeah, that's a motivator. Yeah, for me, it's I want to make an impact, right? So I want to make an impact on the health of businesses and of leaders. And so that's why I want to grow my business. Teva says to greater impact, Deborah, to grow my organization and develop for continued residual income. So income. Teva's great minds. So that's more autonomy, more impact, more peace of mind. Yeah. So some of it is like really measurable in terms of numbers, right? Some people about the money, about the growth, and some people it's really about both here too. Peace of mind is so important. Okay, Scott.
I was going to say it's such an interesting balance as well, because I think for most of the folks on this call is independent business owners and entrepreneurs, there's just so much risk that comes with starting a business and then effort that has to be put forth. And let's face, for many of us, and I know personally, in the independence, I saw it. So you spoke about passion and what's the reason for starting a business. And in my instance, I really didn't believe I was going to get into the on-demand storage business, but my passion was to have independence and to achieve financial security and independence from a liquidity event ultimately. And so my goal and what I was trying to figure out was a business that I could do that. And it led me down a path where an idea popped up into my mind, and I kind of pursued that idea. I do think that we've all had the experience, though, as individual business owners who want more autonomy and peace of mind. Looking at what's in the chat, even greater impact. With that comes a lot of work. And I think we all get stuck with wearing many, many hats in that work. So not only do you have to deal with whether it's the right insurance for your commercial business, or getting an office, or dealing with marketing, or how do you actually go to market and build your brand. The hats that we start to wear as individual business owners get more complex. And so many times I think in this journey of autonomy or the creation of wealth, or actually more independence, you're working twice as hard. It becomes a 7-day-a-week job. At least that was my experience. There was never any time off. There was times when I was on one side of bankruptcy versus extreme wealth and success. And that journey is a bumpy journey. And I think that we have to kind of put in kind of boundaries of how do you spend your time and what becomes important to the business and what are you trying to create. And this goes back to, I think what you asked in the beginning is, what's your goal? What's your goal of your business? Is it a lifestyle business? Is it something where you really want to create a lifestyle where you're going to put in a certain amount of time and a certain amount of effort, but you are the brand and the brand's going to stay with you. And as you kind of wind out at a certain period of time, that's going to go away. Or do you want to build something that's going to be something you can potentially sell. That's going to have an exit strategy. It's going to create potentially something bigger than yourself. You're not just the brand. There's going to be other people that may be involved in this business, and it will have a life after your own. And
Right.
that was my goal, and I knew that out front. And so I had to build something that was scalable, and that had a path that I had to pursue, and I had to bring in people. And I think one of the chat messages, if I scroll up, was maybe that was from you, Peter, was to reduce the risk of key person dependence. And, and how do you do that? And what's the strategy around that? And those are big decisions that require pathing and time to map out.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's really valuable. Nancy, to answer your question, yeah, the question was like, what is the outcome, like of your business, right? Not just sales. Like the reason you sell is because you want to achieve an outcome, right? And sometimes we don't really think about that, or we get lost in it, And I think it's so important to bring it back and say, when you think about what your outcome is it impact? Is it money? Is it whatever it is? That can drive then what you do underneath. And so Scott, when you when you launched Box Butler, right, you really had to break through the clutter. There were moving companies, as you were saying, that were kind of doing the same thing, but they didn't really, what was the impetus for it? Tell us, and tell us how you got creative to really break through the clutter.
Yeah, so Box Butler was launched. I wrote the business plan. I left my corporate job in 2007, and again, I wanted. My goal was independence and not to be reporting into a management team or to have a structure in my life that I couldn't control. Little did I know the business would kind of drive so much of my life and change my life in ways that was unexpected. But there was really nothing in the marketplace at the time with regard to on-demand storage. We were the first. It was the beginning of Fresh Direct. Fresh Direct had just launched, and I had a peanut butter meets chocolate moment when Fresh Direct came through my front door to drop off groceries. And someone in my building, we lived in New York City at the time, and we have storage in the basement, and the storage lockers got flooded. And when those storage lockers got flooded, one of the folks on the top floor was going down the elevator to get all of our stuff out of storage, bring it back upstairs, clean it, and then put it into a storage locker. And I thought, well, if we can do this for grocery business, why can't we do this for the storage business? It never really crossed my mind, I should say, that it was similar to what moving companies did. But what I really wanted to offer and to build was a concierge, high touch, high value experience for my clients. And so it first started with the name and the positioning of what that name represented. And so we came up with the concept of butler, and then the concept of a box in front of that. So when you think about a butler, everybody wants a butler in their lives in some way, shape, or form, and it has an aspirational goal. So I was really trying to establish an aspirational brand and to make sure that that brand was something someone can call up and request their deliveries and make it really easy. So part of the early days of Box Butler was building an image that was kind of foundational in what I believe that was core, which was a service platform that was exceptional. And so we started to pioneer concepts like 2-hour delivery window. So it wasn't similar to getting a cable appointment where you would wait all day and not know what was going to happen. So we really drove KPIs into the business where if you called up,
Did you freeze? Yeah, it froze a little.
clutter, I had a small budget, and the budget was tiny. And so how do you cut through clutter with a small budget? And so we had to and really segment the market and understand where our buyers were. And whatever budget I did have, and it was probably about $50,000, I put it in the Upper West Side. So as a city resident, I looked at where my buyers could be. I knew that there was a fair amount of children, parents, small apartments, cramped quarters, and we started to segment. And so we went to the Upper West Side, and we did everything from guerrilla marketing, so hanging out on street corners with actors and actresses dressed up and looking sharp and in tuxedo jackets and balloons to draw attention to the brand, as well as spending some dollars on phone kiosk advertising, the direct mail. And then I got very, very fortunate. I did put a fair amount of my budget into a PR company, and we got picked up because of the uniqueness of the brand. And through that, we wound up appearing on ABC News, which at the time, it was just the beginning of when taxi cabs had TVs in the back. And I don't know about everyone on this call, but I thought they were extremely annoying and kind of disruptive to my taxi ride until the day when one of my friends called up and said, I'm in the back of a taxi cab and you just showed up on screen from an ABC interview. And that really changed the game for me. It got picked up on the cab feed. We were in the back of taxi cabs, yellow medallions for about a month. And all of a sudden, when I started getting phone calls and the phone started going from 10 clients to 100 clients to 500 clients and to 1,000 clients, what I heard consistently was you're everywhere. And there was just this buzz that was created, at least in New York City, and particularly around the Upper West Side, to the day I sold the business. The majority of our clients, the true concentration, came from that same area. And what it taught me at that time was really to micro target, particularly when you have limited budgets. Know who your buyer is. Where can you really concentrate your efforts to create your own sense of buzz? And that's what we did with Box Butler. It
Yeah,
worked
let
out
me jump in
extremely,
for a
extremely
second,
well.
Scott. Yeah, so I love, so a lot of lessons in there, right? You guys, so created a brand that was unique with a name that really spoke to a particular target audience. Geo-targeting, understanding that there's people living in small apartments, right, that might need this service, and having success in a smaller area to grow to another area, right? Breaking through the clutter, hiring actors to stand on corners in the street to draw attention, so that it got picked up by a news station. These are all interesting thing on a shoestring budget, right? And so I'm curious, can you guys share in the chat too, what is the most creative technique you've used to drive sales? So there, I mean, these days too, there's just so much creativity that's needed, right? Because, everything's virtual, but it's starting to be together. And my husband's in sales as well. And he's just starting to get calls where he can actually see people. It's like exciting. I can actually see people, but it's one of the questions came in, Zoom versus in person, and how do we balance that? So Benji says she's still working on it. Okay. Yeah. I think we are constantly working on it. Peter, what do you mean by opportunistic marketing?
One of our service lines is cybersecurity. And here's a quick example. Our chairman received a letter that the Bentley dealer he bought his car from in Florida was breached for cyber ransomware attack. And he was concerned about his personal information being stolen and used inappropriately. So we decided, and this was our first experience doing this, to target all the auto dealers in South Florida, where this dealership was. So we're using things in the news, and I wouldn't necessarily say this is a good thing to do all the time, which is why I say it's opportunistic, to educate and aware potential customers that there are solutions so things don't happen to them.
Yeah. Joe, so I love what you said, because sometimes things happen that just draw attention to your industry or your brand, or an individual at your company. And how can you use that to, piggyback on the visibility that it's getting?
It's kind of that balance of fear-based marketing in a way too, Peter. I think there's that, education where I don't want this to happen. There's a concern that you create. So I think what you're doing is brilliant, because you're really protecting your clients by educating them. But there's this sense of fear if I don't do it. So it creates a need, and it actually moves the sale forward faster as well, because every day they don't take advantage of putting something in place, they're putting their clients' data at risk. And if they have a breach, right, that could be expensive to their business.
And they don't think about the impact. They think about the impact of their business often, which is a day-to-day operations, but they don't think about the long-term impact, the relationship with the clients, which is more important than being shut down for 2 days.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's so interesting because part of this is getting through the clutter. I think that's just a great example of getting through the clutter. And I currently lead a team of about 8 people in my $50 million business, and trying to get the sales organization to extract information in the marketplace to educate our clients that adds value. Even if they don't move and buy from you, Peter, I'm sure you're raising awareness that they have to then think about and make some decisions around. So you're giving something to your clients without even having to necessarily demonstrate your solution, but you're giving them something to think about, and then you can help.
Right.
You also did something that was brilliant. When you hired the actors and with balloons, you sort of took off on that lifestyle concept that you were speaking about. You weren't fire hosing with sales and handing out literature. People, you piqued their interest and their curiosity, and that led to connecting and building that relationship so that they would want to learn more. But it was a lifestyle that you were trying to convey.
Completely, you're spot on. And it was interesting on that lifestyle side as well. That was our goal, and it continues to be the goal in this space. The company I was acquired by Iron Mountain, and then there were some other roll-ups, and right now it's under the name of Make Space. But we also, there's marketing that can go on. That was a cheap exercise. I mean, just to raise awareness. A lot of us, I think, as we think about operating on such limited budgets, the other thing that's out there, and all of you, I think, have opportunity. Where are the partnerships? From a business development perspective, there's so many opportunities to partner with other businesses that also want to have strategic relationships with providers of services or product that can help them with their clients, because we're all trying to get stickier with our own clients and bring value to those relationships. So for me with Box Butler, I partnered with realtors, so to help them in the staging process so that they can help to declutter people's homes to make them appear more spacious and less cluttered. And that was a great avenue for us. I partnered with professional organizers that help people get rid of their own clutter to help them stage or just live a more comfortable lifestyle, that lifestyle brand. And then I partnered with property developers, and my first one was Related. And I think we all know who Related is, and they're Time Warner, Steve Ross, big company. And once I had Related as a property develop partner, it was amazing from a credibility perspective. This almost speaks to your Bentley dealer. If you're doing it for one, many others will follow. And it's just cracking that first one where you can then start to leverage the story and tell that you have other clients in this space and they see the value. And it just changes as you start to get that momentum.
Yeah. Sorry, I want to interrupt and just ask you guys. So who can you partner with? Please write in the chat. Who can you partner with that you're not currently partnering with? Right? Whether it's a business, an individual, a category, like Scott was saying, realtors, etc. I'm going to note too that a couple people wrote some interesting things in the chat about, Joe, like totally hiring comedy writers for your email. Like everyone gets such crazy amounts of email. So, certainly breaking through the clutter there, huge. And Deborah, we've also, when you have people in a high traffic area already, take advantage of that, right? Take advantage of people that might need those services. So who can you partner with that you're not already partnering, right? Get creative. So in my world, right, I'm talking about partnering with CFOs, right? They're looking at the finances of the businesses. They know when they need guidance and somebody who can look at a broader picture for them and help guide them through it. That's sort of my current focus, in terms of how I can grow my business. I hear crickets, so I'm going to move on. Joe asked the question, Scott, can you share your journey with how you built the team and managed everyone to help you move to reach your goals? So let's talk about, we'll talk about that in a second. I think we want to talk about that when we get into sort of the resiliency and the connection. So in terms of building connections, right? And sort of getting to the point where you have a shot, right? You have one shot with somebody. Someone said yes to a meeting, or they're opening up your email or whatever it is. How can we, I mean, you wrote an article, recently, and And in it, one of the things that you said, the article is called "Good to Great: 5 Qualities to Distinguish Successful Sales Professional." Like, how can people be successful, right? And the sales process is a number game, but it's also a quality game, right? So you're getting these quality leads, ideally. And how, Scott, in your experience, how can we make a strong connection so we can convert them?
You know, it's so interesting. I think we're so fast to jump on a lead and to reach out and do not put the thought into that customized communication. You know, there's one-to-many marketing, I think, is that things gone past us. It's not as effective if you can really customize your message. And the first thing that I stress with our sales team now is writing skills, particularly in the digital world that we're in today. Be choosy on the words that you use. Be short on your messaging. Give something in that message before you ask to get something. Be sure you're using just tools to make sure your grammar, your punctuation, your syntax is correct. No one wants to receive a correspondence from someone they're about to do business with that has typos, that has poor punctuation, that the grammar is wrong. What a mess and what a turnoff. It's a bad date. And so I close those emails, and I think everyone here knows how many emails you get in a day. It's just not effective. And I think part of this also, I don't do business with anybody. I don't check out on LinkedIn first. You know, there is so much content in the market today about us. What does your digital footprint look like? And are you managing it? For, I think, many folks here on the call, you're the face of your business. And
Has everyone Googled themselves lately?
Yes.
Regularly, right? Regularly go, just to see what, or just see who has your name. Sometimes it's like, oh, I'm not a writer. Like, I'm not I'm still alive, that kind of thing. But yeah, your digital footprint is so important. And that's why also creating your own content, right? Writing articles. Sure. And, as annoying as it is to get on LinkedIn all the time and comment on other people's things and write your own things and share, and in a way that is giving, like you're saying, Scott, and let's talk about giving too in a second, because if everything that you post and say to anybody else is about selling to them and not listening to them and not adding any value to them, they don't want anything to do with you. They are not going to think of you as a category expert or as somebody that they want to have a relationship with, and selling a product or service to them is having a relationship. Can you speak to that, Scott, a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, Marge. And you're giving today by having this seminar. This is all about a give, and you're not even asking for a get. So I think this building of a relationship and value-based selling is critical in today's marketplace. And so what are we really doing in our reach out, in our communication, and what we're ultimately offering, what value are we providing? I think the idea of a hard close, it's hard to ask for a hard close these days. It looks disingenuous. You're trying to close a sale as opposed to build a relationship. And once you break through that clutter and you have that conversation, what is your value proposition and how are you positioning that value proposition to your clients? Can you articulate it? Are you comfortable articulating, and how do you articulate it? And then does that align on your website, on your LinkedIn profile, on anything that's your digital footprint around your brand? Are you clearly articulating how you help your clients? I think that part of alignment is truly important on how you position yourself so that you find the right buyers out there, because they're going to come to you and they're going to start to, I think whoever's buying those Bentleys, Peter, can envision what they're going to feel like when they get into that car and they pull it into their garage and they kind of pull out of their garage and go out to dinner and they pull up in the front of a restaurant, and that special feeling of driving a Bentley and being looked at. There's a certain type of buyer for that. And not everybody wants a Bentley, but you can't sell a Bentley to someone who wants to drive a Ford Mustang. There are two different buyers. So, you really have to understand who's your buyer profile, and then how do you sell to them? And that sell is more about presenting value as opposed to trying to rush the sale.
And yes, Peter, it's Simon Sinek. I agree. Like, why the people will buy from you, not what you sell, but why you sell it and what's surrounding it, what the experience is. So for Box Butler, if the experience once they made the phone call and booked somebody to come pick up their stuff was crappy, done, they're never going to go back to you. So So that's really important. So has everybody thought about what value their product or service adds to their customer? And if you want to share in the chat, go ahead. But what value are you providing to them? And does that line up with who you've decided is your target audience? Because targeting is so important in this. I mean, I think, Scott, you and I talked about how cold calling, just doesn't work, right? I mean, talk about how you feel about cold calling, how you feel about automating messages versus not. And they're two separate things, right?
Yeah, they are two separate things. I do think just on this value conversation, before we move off of it, if your value proposition is you're cheaper, I think that's a really hard value proposition for anyone who's on this call, that you can do things less expensively. It's a race to the bottom. So I think you really, if that's in your mind that you can even save money, there has to be more than that in today's market. And even in saving money, that has to create some sort of efficiency or a value proposition outside of just a driver from a cost perspective. It's a really hard place to play. Shifting to kind of the conversation around cold calling, who picks up a cold call? I mean, you may have some luck. Occasionally someone's going to pick up and then you're trying to sell to them. But we find there's so many more effective ways to reach out to clients, to open up a door so that when you do make that phone call, it's at least warm. They may be aware of you. They know what you're calling about. Marjorie mentioned earlier this idea of smarketing, where we've aligned both the marketing organization and the sales organization under one umbrella, reporting up into one leader. And what it's allowed us to do is now get down to what is account-based marketing. So before we even pick up a phone for a call, we're going into accounts and we're really speaking to the Microsofts, the Amazons, the Googles, the Ciscos of the world with a very targeted approach that speaks to them. It's not one to many. It's a B2B relationship, and we're trying to open up the doors. We're focused in on the legal marketplace, so compliance, governance, the translation of patents, or some of the work that we do now. And so we're really speaking to them and what their business needs are and what their challenges are. And so before we have that cold call exercise, we've established some brand identity already in the account. Some of this is through some automation of email. So we do use Pardot, which is part of Salesforce. They have an Engage model. Some of the tools that are out there, you can start to build email campaign programs, but I would segment those email campaign programs out so it goes to your target audience and A/B test. Change subject matter lines, change kind of the content that's in the email itself, fire them off at different times during the day, depending upon who your buyer is and when it's going to really land in their inbox at the right time. But you also have to supplement those outbound emails with phone calls. It's just not a one-touch exercise anymore. And we also push, and I push pretty hard, to connect on LinkedIn as well as another way to make that initial call warm, so that the clients know, your prospects know who's reaching out, and they get to see who you are.
Yeah, I think that's really important, that it's all part of a mix, right? And so if you are going to automate messaging, and I've gotten some really, what felt like personalized messages to me. I know they weren't, right? But they felt like they were. And I've gotten some messages that, let's say something like, hey, I know you're in the insurance business. Let's talk. Not in the insurance business. So, I using that as a step in your toolbox of then following up with this and then following up with that and then calling but always adding value, right? Always adding value. So does anybody have any questions or comments on that? Because are you struggling to figure out where you can add value? Or are you feeling really confident that you know what value you're adding? It's just a matter of the timing or whatever it might be in order to nail the sale.
How are folks building their book? I mean, what are you doing out there to attract new clients? Are you finding anything is working over something else? Are you struggling with growing your business, or are you comfortable with where your revenue is now?
So Laura is saying, we know the value, finding the clients who appreciate the value is a trick. Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned something interesting where you combine and align marketing and sales. When you have a value add, you see it, and it takes a very special way of communicating and hooking or closing that sale. Some days it happens even before you blink an eye, and those are very sweet orders or purchase or commitments. But the ones that where you engage their interest and they're excited to learn more, but you're burping the baby, they're not yet ready at that moment. That's where it's a very fine art. I'd love you to share some of your thoughts on that, because it's clear you have a value add and you have a product, a service, but it's sometimes moving. You see the value of your business alliance with particular prospects, but they may take a little longer. How do you deal with those?
Yeah, and we're very much, it's so interesting, right? We want to move the sale forward, obviously, and it's critical to our business to be closing business. But there's a lot of folks that just aren't ready to buy. And those are nurturing campaigns. We put that into that category of nurture, where, we'll pull back a little bit. And there's a lot of buyers out there. And I think, sometimes we have to let go of those that aren't ready and keep them on our radar, not lose them, but nurture them. And that means, for me and for us, it's sending them an article, giving them another example, not taking them off the radar, but not going down that funnel of where we're going to convert them to a buyer in the near term, and back off a little bit. I think if you build that funnel of folks that are coming down fast, and you have those sweet days, which I know those sweet days as well are wonderful, but then you have those days where things are just stalling. It's hard. And Margie, we talked about this a little bit, even in prepping for this call, to have kind of patience. I think the hardest thing particularly as a small business owner, but even as working in a corporate, that patience factor is really, really difficult. And when do you make the decision just to back off, just to take a pause? And sometimes those pauses are the best thing you can do to then let the sale move forward.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. And I want to get to that. I just want to address Laura for a second, because I think that you stated a problem that a lot of people have, a lot of entrepreneurs have, which is, you're confident, what your value is and what you're selling, but finding the right clients to say yes at the right time can be very, very tricky. And I wanted to give you all the space to think about, what was that sale that went the way you hoped every sale would go? Right? Can you articulate in your mind that process? And Laura, is there an example that you?
No, I'm actually not directly on the sales side. I've been helping on a friend of mine who has a boutique import business of boutique wines from Italy. So they're higher end, finding the restaurants, the individuals, the distributors even, to be interested in it when you're such small quantities and a higher price point, but they're unique. You can't get them. So the value is for the wine connoisseur, so there's tons of wine tastings and going to different, even going to a, before COVID, going to a tourism convention, to just talk about the wine, ask people, if they're interested in visiting the vineyards, very eclectic type approach here. But
Does your friend have a very small budget for a giveaway? Not to suggest that they give a wine bottle at every corner, like the balloons. I keep thinking of Scott's balloons, but I wonder, where you might be able to bottle some mini bottles so that you could hand it out, distribute it to a select group of restaurants or wine groups, networking groups where there, because there's a number of groups that do wine tasting events that are centered around business networking. So I was just wondering if you can bottle small ones so that they, because that's a differentiating mark that they could see what is special about the wine versus something else that they might be getting or buying from someone
Yeah,
else.
and versus, she has a couple people helping her, but she's just working 24/7 trying to go and meet people and contact. And Scott, like you said, she has to take that slow approach. She has to meet them when they're ready to meet her and to talk about the wine. And I just, if I'm going to events or I'm meeting people, like even this last weekend, I popped in at a friend's house and I met a young man who's a route driver for a wine distributor. And I'm like, oh, well, hey, we could actually, very small. And she's like, yeah, I need a distributor in Connecticut. So I'm trying to get a hold of him. Deborah, the wine bottles, the small ones sound interesting. I'll mention that to her. If they could do that, have, get a run and she could get 50 of them and then she could send them out and kind of like with a history of her company.
I'll mention one other
It's
thing.
also like a great example, right? Like you were saying, Laura, of the patients, that it sounds like she's doing all the good things that she can be doing, and she understands who her target. And an important part of that is her resiliency around it.
Yeah.
Right. So Scott, maybe you could speak to that a little bit. Patience and resiliency, right? As entrepreneurs and people who are helping entrepreneurs and business leaders, we have to not only be patient, but also not let the judgment and the negativity that might be coming our way, the no's or the lack of answers that coming our way, impact our ability to forge ahead. And so, Scott, maybe you want to speak to that a little bit, and how you maintained your resiliency during all of that, and how you think that works today in your current role.
Yeah, I think and Laura, I get the challenge you have. I think, Deborah, that's a great suggestion. And I think part of that resiliency and being a business owner or a business leader is that you're constantly trying to think of new paths and new ways of trying to present your product in the marketplace or your service in the marketplace. And there's and Laura, I think about influencers right now potentially for higher end wines, and can you start to establish a brand through influencers? For me, and being resilient, some of it is just attitude. I think waking up in the morning as a business owner and potentially cash flow challenges and all the things that we're faced with on a day in and day out basis is a scary proposition. So I'm shaking those cobwebs off and those negative thoughts, and being very positive in your approach and trying to figure out what new can you do. But I think seeing it through is also really important. So as you develop a plan, we all talk about pivoting in our lives and our businesses. And if you're starting to see signs, maybe there is things that you have to pivot on, but measure your success or measure what you're trying to achieve. I think it's very, very difficult to be running in a direction with not having goals set. And so part of getting through and being resilient is knowing that I'm hitting goals that are realistic. And so, Laura, for your wine person, in my mind, what are her sales goals? And are they realistic? Are they achievable? And is she building a plan to get there so that whether she can leave her current job or she can hire more people or can support the business? I think just setting up realistic, achievable goals that you can measure against helps to give you some of the strength to know you're moving forward in the right direction.
And to build on that, something that you and I talked about, Scott, and how is that being tracked and how often are you looking at it? Right? Because you were saying that you guys look at yours daily. How are you going against what you're trying to achieve? I have a client who is very successful in the work that they do, but we're very unfamiliar with their numbers. They were providing a lot of value to their clients, but when they looked at the numbers, they were not anywhere near where they needed to be to achieve their long-term goals and outcomes. But looking at those numbers, you can shift how you organize your business, the KPIs that you set for your team. and the clarity that around that you put those KPIs and what's expected of everybody around you and what's expected of your clientele. If in the wine service area, there's a client, but they're only buying a small amount, but there's another client that has a lot more potential, where should you be spending your time and your energy? So that's another thing to think about. I have another client who is a CPA, and he's got a book of about 500 clients, and he's going crazy because he's doing it all himself. He doesn't have any support, and doesn't have any software or support or anything like that. And so looking at his numbers and saying, hey, get rid of these clients, instead focus on these clients and add value to them and other products and services that you can do. So Scott, can you speak to that a little bit in terms of, how you track that and how you make magic out of it? And to Joe's question earlier, I know he had to leave, but I'd still like to answer his question so he could watch the video, is how do you build a team around it and move them towards your goals and have them feel the same passion you feel towards it?
Yeah. Interesting. I think it depends on the size of your business. But to answer the tracking side, I tracked both in my business, everything I could. So I tracked on-time delivery. I tracked number of calls that were coming in. I tracked the purchases that were being made, the size of those purchases, the neighborhoods that they were coming from. I try to get as much data as I possibly can so I can utilize that data to then invest back into the business. And that really helped me build the business because, to your point, Marjorie, I had clients that were spending $10 on storage. When I looked at my cost structure, I wasn't going to make any money on those clients. It wasn't really helping my business. And so I had to really price them out of the market. And I changed my pricing strategy because at $10 a month, loss leader, and when you're operating on a shoestring budget and trying to keep your mortgage payment, it's near impossible to have loss leaders unless you have very deep pockets and either private equity or corporate dollars to spend. We can go down that path. So to your point about the accountant, I got rid of those clients and I moved my price point and I got a higher end client, which is really what my brand was all about to begin with. So that was important.
Yeah, and to build on that, two things. One is a lot of people said when they registered for this that one of their biggest challenges in sales is time management, being able to spend enough time to get the client in the sale, wearing too many hats. And that is one way to think about budgeting your time, is taking a look at the numbers and the tracking and understanding where is the quadrant that's got the high value, low cost, and not just financial cost, but cost and energy for you. And Nancy, you just asked the question, do you try to convert less profitable clients before you dump them? And how, and Scott, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I'm just, yes and no. I don't want to lose a client ever. And that's always a real painful experience. But when you start to, if you really understand your business, and I think for any owner of a business, you have to know your numbers. And I just was not in a position to be losing money. And even today, we'll walk away from a multi $600,000-$700,000 deal if we can't make money. It's not worth it, even for the prestige of a label. I don't want to work for free. I don't want to have any of my partners work for free. When I hire somebody, I want them to make profit. I want it to be a realistic profit. I don't want them to gouge me, but there has to be some give and take in those relationships. And so if a client's not profitable, and depending upon what type of client that is, if you're B2C, that may be a different conversation than a B2B relationship. But we speak to our B2B relationship clients where we have to have a price increase so that we can actually produce the level of work that they expect from us at a reasonable margin. And I think that those conversations are adult conversations, they're business conversations, and buyers can understand that. And that's a partnership. So I think that that's key. As far as Joe's question about, I think building a team, I decided very early on, and the culture that I wanted in my organization was one of teamwork, collaboration, and participation. And so my key hires, I gave phantom equity to, so that when I had eventually a liquidity event, which happened in 2015 with the purchase of Iron Mountain, my core people, and my business grew to about 25 people. The core leaders, and there were about 5 of them, all received checks from me as part of the liquidity event that I was part of. And along the way, I bonused. So I compensated on cash and making sure that we were aligned so they knew how the business was performing and how we were looking month over month, quarter over quarter. And I found, particularly growing a business and trying to drive efficiency, cost containment, and service delivery into the mix, that being transparent and sharing some of this information as a privately held company that I was spending my own money in was really important. And one of the other things that was super important for my business at the time, and Yelp wasn't so easy to manipulate, but Yelp was a big driver for credibility in the business. And so I set up a program for any of our butlers, people that were in the field, that if they were able to garner a 5-star Yelp review from that service delivery experience, they got $150. And I love giving out those checks. That was so important to me because it really built my brand up. And when kind of clients wrote a review about how good their experience was, it really helped to spread the word and to give us what I was building from the beginning, this experience of trust and service. So, in building that team, I think you have to align rewards, and those rewards don't have to always be monetary rewards, but you have to kind of align the organization with what you want to build.
Yeah, I think that's really amazing. I think that transparency that you built in the team it's unfortunately it's kind of rare, right? I think that people are getting there now, but in the conversations that I have a lot of time, it's very much about, listen, just be authentic. Let's be transparent. This is a crazy time. This is the time to do it. Let's stop the whispering and the competition, healthy competition is good, but when it's around invisible undertones and things like that, it's not healthy, right? So I love the transparency around it. Any question? Good, Scott. What were you gonna say?
No, I was going to say we're doing it today, even in a larger corporate setting. So, every morning I send a note out to the entire team in North America around what did prior day look like? How did we do with outreach to clients? How many phone calls were made? How many meetings were held, whether it was Zoom or through the phone? How many quotes came in? What did we book in revenue the day prior? So I think what it drives is accountability into the organization. One of the most frustrating things to be doing, particularly as we lead virtually, is not have accountability. So having that visibility and those KPIs set and everyone understanding what the goals are, and then reinforcing that, knowing that there are eyes on, it drives not only some competitiveness because all the reps are now stack ranked and they can see how their colleagues are doing, but also knows eyes are on and this is what's expected. And if people know what's expected of them on a day-over-day basis, then it's easier for them to do their job. They're not running around and not really understanding what the expectation is. And then you as a leader or as an owner are not setting those up and everybody's frustrated. And I think that is just a collision course of failure. And so you really have to get ahead of it. And so setting up those expectations and then reporting back on and communicating them regularly, I think an important part of building a business and having a successful business.
Yeah, and something that you and I spoke about earlier is that can be really uncomfortable. And you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's just, especially if you want to try new things and get creative. So, we have just 5 minutes left, but I just want to summarize a little bit of from what the takeaways that I'm going to take to my business and how I help it grow, which is, the transparency and clarifying expectations and understanding your numbers and tracking those numbers, not just the numbers, but what are the other things that are important in the growth of your business and how can you track those? Getting creative and breaking through so you can create a buzz. And understanding that people are freaking bombarded with all kinds of messages. So really geo-target and really be personable in your message and be professional in your messaging. And because you might only have one shot, and understanding that it's just part of a process. And at the same time, being patient and not getting discouraged and being kind to yourself. What did I miss, Scott? What are some of the other key tips we want people to leave with here today?
I think that was a great summary, Marge. And I would just really say, know your numbers. I mean, I know you said this in the beginning, but really understand your business. And it's not just it's where you spend your time. There's numbers in that. What are you doing day in and day out? Track. If you're not growing your business, are you spending enough time on marketing? Are you reaching out to new partnerships? Are you, do you understand your cost structure? Do you really understand what your client mix looks like? Are there clients that you should, Nance, I think, jetson? And would it help your overall margin? Are they helping you grow your business? I think those are some of the hard questions you have to ask on a regular basis, and just challenge your thinking and just don't operate in autopilot. I think being a business owner or a leader, and to your point, being uncomfortable regularly will help you kind of step your game up. And I think really achieve greatness in your own professional development and your business development and your careers.
Thank you for that. And we have a few minutes left. So, I mean, people that haven't had a chance to speak yet, I don't know, Peter, Karen, Mike, anybody want to share an experience that they've had that has led to success? Peter, I know you lead a big team there.
Yeah, it's getting bigger.
Mhm.
We actually just hired 4 new salespeople, and we have 4 more openings.
Opening. Scott is hiring and Peter's hiring. Anybody know anybody looking for?
I can't find salespeople. I'm having challenges.
It is hard. It's hard to find good ones.
It is.
You have to find people that believe in what you do. And it's not a job, it's a lifestyle. And if you do it for the paycheck and not for the enjoyment of your success, your personal success, you're not going to be the performer you can be.
I think that's really meaningful. You got to, work today, right? It is 24. There's no boundary between your personal and your professional life, especially people that are still working from home. And so if you don't believe in what you do, it's going to be super challenging to be successful and happy, right? Because part of it is you want to be happy.
You also, Scott, you explained this, Peter, I don't know you as well, but I'm assuming that you share the same. You've created a culture where if people understand business, the product or services that they'll be selling, but more importantly, they respect the management. For many people who work and can look back on their career, not everybody can say, I loved my boss, or I loved, and I know that when I was in the corporate world, there was one boss that really emulated many of the same things that you did, which was to share and make them feel part of the team. It wasn't that they owned the company, but that they felt a part of it and that they were given responsibility and accountability. And when you are in a sales function, you're responsible either for a territory or for a select group of accounts, and those are yours. But that team philosophy that you've built should help attract people. And it's a two-way street. You want people that are going to extend on what your culture. But I think it would probably be easier for people to want to work for you because you've shared a culture that is positive and there's growth, and that they can be part of that journey. I think that is so powerful. And not every company is run by people that believe in that. So kudos.
Yeah, thank you for that. I agree with you 110%. And the saying, culture eats strategy for lunch, I think is so true and remains true, and such an important component of, I think, any successful business where the employees want to be part of it. The other piece I think is just more true today than ever before is this idea of empathy. And perhaps this has come to me a little bit later in life and really understanding what empathy looks and feels like. But, being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, whether it's a client, it's a colleague, an employee, a grocery store worker at times, and really exhibiting that, I think, in our day-to-day lives, particularly with the pandemic and some of the changes we've all had to face, it just has it has authenticity to it, and it really gains credibility. And so you become, I think, a better self, and you actually present better. And I think people want to buy from people that they like. And so this all was about selling initially, but I do think that as you start to set this up, we buy from one another. Ultimately, there's very rarely just a blank face, particularly as small businesses. There is some sort of brand that you're buying from, and that gets established from the leadership. And so I think this is all important components.
So you encouraged us to
Great.
explore LinkedIn, and which of this, I feel like it's that old television program, like What's My Line? You know, which Scott Sinclair are you? Because there's about 10.
Oh, I'm
Scott
Box
Sinclair.
Butler. So I'm Scott Sinclair, Box Butler. If you put We Localize in, that's the one. That's
We
the
love
one.
it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
yes.
thank you, everyone. Thank you. But thanks to Scott. Thank you all for participating. Certainly we hope this was helpful as we try to create an opportunity to support small business and small business growth, especially during this crazy time. So everyone, thank you for your time. The next one will be the third week in June. Jeez, the third Thursday in June at 8:30 a.m. And I'll send out invites, and thank you as usual, and have a great day.